Hey everyone, I figured with the influx of subscribers I would put out a little kind of getting to know your ROG Ally video, and as well as some general Windows know-how, good to know things, in case you run into some issues. As well, I just wanted to talk about my giveaway that I have going on, the video that I posted on Sunday, the Tears of the Kingdom video on the Ally. I proposed that if that got up to 500 likes and I got over or to 1,500 subscribers, sorry, by Friday, that I would give away 2 full-price base value games, as opposed to just 1 base value game, full-price base value game. But we are now over 1,600 subscribers, so that's kind of well past my original kind of goal or challenge that I put out to the community. And I fully expect for that number to go down, or like the numbers to dwindle after the giveaway, because I told them, yeah, okay, subscribe and then unsubscribe after the giveaway. It's fine. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be subscribed to win or to get the giveaway. So if people unsubscribe or whatever, that's fine. No hard feelings. Now, moving into my previous video that I put up, that's referring to the Debloat windows with the Nosey Bloaty. I am aware of the CTT Chris Titus Tech Debloat for Windows as well. I'm just going to give myself a little bit more time with that one, as I'm not 100% familiar with it. So I'm just going to tool around with it, kind of tweak things one at a time, see what happens, see what breaks, if anything breaks, and then I'll make a full and proper video about that as well. So yeah, just want to take my time with that one, because the Nosey Bloaty, like, I've used it before in the past with Steam Deck, and I've done it the exact same way, and it didn't seem to break anything there. But it appears as though, at least on the Ally, some people were reporting that their fingerprint sensor was broken or not working, but you can reinstall the drivers through the ROG Ally website. As well, you weren't able to access the BIOS menu through the volume down and power button. But I've found that's always been a little bit tricky. Apparently the best way to do it is to press the power on button and then just keep clicking the power volume down button, sorry. Not holding it, just keep spamming it, because apparently it's kind of like the default key, not like a hold button like the Steam. So give that a try if you can't get into your BIOS. If not, it does seem that there is something in the Nosey Bloaty that will break something with the BIOS, but you can still access it through the Windows itself as well, through the advanced restart troubleshoot menu. And then finally, before we get into the video proper, I just also wanted to mention that there has been some people asking or some interest in a possible Discord like community. I was never really kind of intending any of that, or like any sort of, I don't know, anything beyond YouTube really. But I can definitely see the value in that, because at least that way you have like kind of that direct communication. That's not, you're not waiting on YouTube, you're not limited by what you can post, whatever. So I definitely see the benefit for that. So if people were interested in that, I would have no problem kind of getting that set up and running. I'm not 100% familiar with Discord servers or anything like that. So if there is people out there that are familiar with it or kind of know a little bit about the process and setup and everything, feel free to reach out and we could talk about that and whatever. But yeah, just let me know in the comments if you feel like that's something you would do or want to do. I figure I'd treat it as like a helpful kind of IT computer electronics help hub, not necessarily geared just towards like the ROG Ally, the Steam Deck, or handheld emulators or whatever. It can be from a range of things. Like I have a decent range of knowledge of computers and technology and different operating systems, a little bit of like the hardware repair and building and stuff like that. Obviously my knowledge is not vast and great. I'm not Gandalf or anything like that. I'd like to consider myself a jack of all trades, but master of none. It's all just kind of self-taught for the most part, to be honest with you, just over many, many years. But anyway, I digress. So that's kind of what I would treat the Discord hub as. And then obviously if people were joining as well, that they had knowledge in a specific area, you could give them like a designation of like, oh, okay, this person's a Windows expert, this person's a SteamOS Linux expert, this person's a whatever, right? And even if it's just something as simple as, oh, hey, like, how do I reset my router, or how do I do whatever, right? Like, yeah, just a nice kind of helpful hub area. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and we'll potentially get that ball rolling as well. Alright, and then just before we get into everything, I just wanted to mention the Command Center button and the Armoury Crate button, sorry. So underneath the Start button on the right-hand side, that's your Armoury Crate button. That'll basically just take you to desktop and big picture mode for it. And then on the left-hand side, we have the Command Center button. So that will bring up the Command Center, obviously. It's basically just a quick access menu equivalent on the Steam Deck. You can control your brightness, your speaker volume. Here you can do your sleep, hibernate, restart, shutdown, like all your power menu settings. And then you have all of your quick toggle settings. So not all of these are filled in by default, and I'll show you how to get into that and edit those as well, and kind of what everything means. But so getting into Armoury Crate itself, going over to content first, we're going to go into the media gallery. So this is where you can see like your screenshots and whatever. Going over to system, this is where you can find your device info. Nothing really too much to write home about there, but if you ever need your serial number, that's where you can find it, and as well as on the bottom of your device. There we can go into storage. This is where you can access your local storage and your external micro SD storage. There's a tool here to move all your media to your local storage and move all your media to the external storage as well. In here, there's an about to check your service version and check to see if that's up to date. The only thing really important here is you can do record logging for diagnostics if you need to send it to ASUS support if you're getting a bug or something like that with Armoury Crate. And then also here you can turn this on and off. So this will control Armoury Crate to either turn on or off at the start of Windows, basically, whether it launches or not. I would recommend leaving this on unless you plan on just running Steam Big Picture mode exclusively, or Play Night launcher, like a similar kind of all-in-one launcher. But otherwise, I'd just suggest leaving that on, because as well you can control all the TDP and have all the quick access and all that stuff here. Now, moving out of there, you can go to game platforms to install specific game platforms. They don't list all of them here, so like Battle.net, Riot, or whatever. I can't remember all of them. There's so many of them nowadays. But you can install your own as well manually, just as you would like on a regular desktop or laptop Windows device. Now, moving over to Help Center, if you want to go through the tutorials, although they're not really that great in my opinion, or the XG Mobile, there's specific things there, how you need to safely eject it before you pull it out, otherwise it could blue screen. And then there's an FAQ, it'll just take you to their FAQ website. User Center, you can set up an account here and get rewards off of buying stuff through their storefront. I think it's all based in US dollars, and the storefront is whatever. I've never bought anything off there, so I can't really comment. Going into Update Center, this will be your updates for all of your Armoury Crate stuff, as well as the Aura service stuff, as well as other like game SDK specific stuff, but mostly this is all just like your Armoury Crate based stuff. But it will be important to keep this up to date, because this is where the updates to actual Armoury Crate will come in. So like if there's any updates to TDP fixes or any sort of bugs or whatever, just always keep that up to date. Now if we go into featured, you can go to game deals. Again, that will take you to their store. But the only thing really worth mentioning here, in my opinion, is if you want like the animated kind of cool funky background like I had, you can go down here, and this is where you can download all of your Aura wallpapers and stuff. You can get static wallpapers as well, so you can get like the equivalent of ones that they don't move. But if you want the fancy ones, they're called Aura wallpapers. And then yeah, so you can just kind of scroll through and see what you want, and I'll show you how to set that up as well. Now if we go to recommended, there's an app here called System Mechanic. It's a paid app after I think 30 days. Basically, it seems like it just runs like the kind of basic like not debloat, but like kind of fat trimming, like emptying your hard drives, cleaning up disk space, defragging stuff, whatever. I don't know. I checked it out. Doesn't seem really worth its spit in my opinion. And then here, I don't know, you redeem codes from ASUS, I guess, presumably. You have to log in to do that. I don't know, to be honest with you. And then under here, so this is how you're going to, if you do the Aura wallpaper, you're going to go into connected devices here, and presumably connected devices have ASUS products as well. This is where like your mice and keyboard would likely show up, and being able to control them through here, I would assume, if it's an ASUS branded device. But anyway, so here's where you can turn on your Aura wallpaper on or off. Here's where your downloads are, so you can see I've downloaded the actually, wow, okay, it doesn't even show my downloaded one. Anyway, but you can design a wallpaper as well. It'll show you how to do that. You can add lighting effects to it, but honestly, I wouldn't bother. If you really want the active wallpaper, you can, or if you don't, it won't be here unless you go to actually set one. You have to like download the Aura wallpaper stuff. So it's when you go to download a wallpaper, then it'll be queued to download, hey, you need to download the Aura wallpaper stuff, and then you'll download that as well. But yeah, so that's how you access that. It's a little kind of unintuitive, and then when you do go to set it, it says, yeah, hey, it uses a bit more GPU resources, and you may increase GPU usage. That's fine. It's honestly like minimal. I wouldn't expect there really to be a big performance hit by doing this. If anything, it would just be to your battery life. But yeah, so that's that. And then sometimes this is buggy out, so there we go, back out. So that kind of covers everything in here. Going over to settings, we can see that we have the, we have the control mode, we have the command center and all that stuff. So we'll go over the command center first. Yeah, we'll go over the command center first. So this is the, again, that's your left button there to bring up the command center. So here's where you can set what ones you want on there. So again, when you get this default out of the box, there's not as many put on, it's not filled up, but this is what you can do. So a few key ones, sorry. The operating mode, that is changing your TDP from like turbo to performance mode or your manual. Control mode is changing from auto, so it'll try to automatically detect whether you're playing a game or whether you're in a desktop environment and set up your controls accordingly. Game profiles, it'll take you to your game profiles where you can set custom controls, sorry. Keyboard will bring up the keyboard, obviously. Real-time monitor, that'll bring up real-time stats info like your FPS, battery level, GPU usage, CPU usage. It's not the greatest in my opinion. It doesn't really show, like it shows the basics, it shows enough, but it's too small in my opinion. Apparently you can resize it if you like flick it up to the corner of the screen, but I've never had that able to work. Anyway, FPS limiter, that would be good if you want to lock your FPS and lock your refresh rate or whatever. So you can either lock it to 60 or 120. I'm sure you'll be able to lock this to 40, 45 refresh rate if you download custom resolution utility, but that's beyond the scope of the video. So in the FPS limiter, what you can do with that is you can either change it from, I believe 15, 30, 45, 60, and then off. So if you're playing, I wouldn't honestly see a use case for 15 FPS limit, but if you're playing like a heavier intense game and you just want to cap off 30 FPS, or if you want to save battery life, something like that, you can do a software 30 FPS lock there. And then if you want it to do 45, that's a pretty good, like, especially for the 120 hertz screen. Again, it would be like 40 hertz on the Steam Deck, right? Except just a little bit. It's a little bit more fluid, and it's within the VRR range, I believe. So I'm fairly certain the VRR range, and VRR, for those of you who don't know, is variable refresh rate. So it, instead of being, okay, we're locked at this refresh rate, and if the game doesn't match up with it, then it's unpleasant. Like it seems like there's stuttering, and like it's like not a game stutter, but just the image just isn't clean, and the presentation and the motion, like interpolation, like it's hard to explain. Like if going from a VRR back to a regular, like you'll immediately go, oh, okay, yeah, I see the difference. So even if you're playing with this, and like how essentially what happens is instead of getting like a locked 60 FPS, you can kind of fluctuate between whatever the range is. So usually in most cases, the monitors, they're like 45 to 47 hertz up to whatever the maximum refresh rate is. So as long as you're in that frame rate budget, then it's going to be a relatively smooth experience. You're not going to notice like the hard drops from 60 to 50. It'll smooth it out because it can change its refresh rate to match the FPS. Sorry. So that's essentially what it's doing, is it's just matching the refresh rate with the FPS. So it's a more smooth, cleaner image. And you'll notice that on the Ally screen. You'll just notice it playing like smoother, kind of fast-paced games. So if you're playing Forza Horizon, you're getting somewhere between 45 to 60 FPS. It's gonna feel a lot smoother than getting 45 to 60 on the Steam Deck would feel. If you want to try it, honestly, just plug it into your TV and then play it on the TV, and then unplug it and play it on your ROG Ally, and then you'll be able to see the difference there and kind of know what I'm talking about once you're in that frame rate budget. But anyway, if you want to lock it to 45, 60, again, I kind of went off, but it's so good to know, I believe. So anyway, we can change our resolution from 720p to 1080p here as well. We can change the refresh rate from 120 to 60 hertz as well. I'm not going to do that because the capture card doesn't like it. Now, AMD RSR. So AMD RSR is Radeon Super Resolution. Essentially what this is before they had, or it might have came out at the same time as FSR. I can't recall the specifics of it, I apologize. But it's essentially FSR1, and FSR1 wasn't involved in like a game kind of coding whatever level. I'm not the biggest expert, and I don't have all the info on hand to know exactly the breakdown of it. But essentially FSR1 was just like kind of a rough upscale. Like it was just a straight upscale. It didn't take in motion vectors or anything like that into account, and it didn't try to there was no like AI upscaling like in the case of DLSS or whatever. So anyway, so RSR is what happens is when you set your game resolution to 720p, and then you turn on RSR and it'll upscale it with like FSR1 to 1080p. So the times that you would want to use this is if you're playing, say, an older game but it's a still kind of intense game or whatever, or it's a recent game and it just doesn't have FSR or any type of upscaling. So what you could do is drop the game resolution to 720p and then turn on RSR, and then it does the upscaling to 1080p. Now, going on to RIS, that's Radeon Image Sharpening. So same idea, well, not same idea, but it's just another tool to sharpen the image. And we'll get into that when I get into the AMD Control Center and how to get there. Beyond that, everything else is kind of sort of self-explanatory. Show desktop, microphone, take screenshot, all that. So yeah, that's your command center there, and kind of all the buttons and know-how there. So now, starting from the left, going to control mode, we have your gamepad mode and your desktop mode. So what this is your base template layouts for your system. So as you can see here, I have on the left trigger, left bumper, right trigger, and then the menu and view button, I have custom functions set up for the secondary functions. So in the case of left bumper, it's just like a macro function that I have set up to make my benchmark stuff run, or bring up the benchmark stats or whatever with my other monitoring software. So here, this is where you can do combined key shortcuts. So if you wanted like for whatever reason, if you wanted an Alt F4, even though I have a specific command for that, you could command like an Alt F4. Or if you want an Alt Tab, but again, they have a command for that. But I know there's, say for instance, there's some issue with games where you'll launch it and it doesn't launch in full screen mode, and you'll see like the taskbar kind of at the top with the X, the full screen, and the minimize button. So you could set a shortcut or a macro for Alt Enter. Alt Enter is the command key to full screen or unfull screen, like window a game mode or a window. So again, that's Alt Enter. If you ever see that, just bring up the keyboard and press Alt Enter, and that'll full screen your game. Or not minimize it, but make it into a windowed mode. But anyway, so that's your macros there. Now going over to your gamepad functions, here's where you can set like other gamepad functions. If you wanted to set left bumper to one of the back buttons or something like that. Action buttons. So here's like kind of Windows command settings. So what you can kind of take away from here, the two main ones that I have is the Xbox button in the bottom right, and then in the middle second row, close current window. So I have the Xbox button set up to holding my back button, one of my back buttons, and then pressing the select button. And then that will bring up the Xbox menu. I don't think it'll work right here, but it should. Okay, sorry, here, I'll give you a demonstration here. Okay, so I have to switch back to game mode manually, gamepad mode, back button, and there we go. And I pressed the wrong button. There we go. Okay, Xbox game bar menu. There we go. Sorry. And then if I want to do but yeah, anyway, so we'll get back into it. Sorry. Yeah. So close current window, again, I have that set to start. So that's like your Alt F4. So that's a real handy one when games are like crashing or lagging or hanging up or whatever, you can do that. If you want to set your to a keyboard shortcut, so if you want to do F11 for full screen, or if you want to do, I don't know, whatever you want. Tilde key for if you're playing like an older kind of Doom game or whatever, something that has like a command center thing that you bring up, whatever. There's a numpad and then your mouse as well that you can set up these settings to. And then going on the left hand side here, so each button will have a primary function and a secondary function. And again, to activate the secondary function, you can do it's default that both back buttons act as like basically a function key. So you hold that down, but you can change these to act as a secondary, or you can change these to act as a button as well as a secondary function. I just leave mine as secondary function because I don't ever really use the back keys for anything else. Now moving on, we can change our dead zones on our sticks as well. So you can increase the dead zone, but you can't decrease it, obviously. But there has been issues, widely reported issues with dead zone issues, like in Windows and in certain games. It appears to be a software issue, so it should be fixed by updates, hopefully. You can change your left stick and your right stick. Oh, sorry, I went too far there. You can change your triggers, and you can, so this is where you set where you want your trigger pull to be, where you want it to activate. You can change these independently, or you can mirror them and they will both be the same. Vibration, same thing. You can do vibration left and right. Okay, moving over to desktop mode, I'll just touch on this briefly. Same thing, like it'll show your sticks and all that stuff on the left hand side, but this is just for desktop mode. So here's where you can set up specific desktop functions if you want to enter or whatever. Like it'll show you here that escape, enter, but you can set up whatever buttons you want. You can set up Xbox buttons. You can do the exact same stuff that you can do in gamepad mode. It's just a different for when you're in gamepad mode or desktop mode in here. And then the auto will hopefully switch back and forth between them. Now, going over to game visual, this is just a quick little kind of screen change. So it changes the colors and the whatever around. So it'll change the color temperature, it'll change saturation levels. I recommend just going to your favorite game and then going to suitable one that works for you. Everyone's going to be different. Going over to lighting, we have the like this is where you can set up the stick lighting or turn it off. So you can go into setting, oops, sorry. My goodness, okay. So you can go over to, holy shoot. Oh, you don't want to go that way though. Okay, go over to settings. So here's where you can turn them off basically. And if you want them to be on while they're sleeping, if you want them to be on when the console's turned on and whatever, this is where you can control all that. To set up basic light effects, you can do your strobing, your color cycle. You can sync it with Aura stuff. If you have like a mouse and keyboard or whatever that you plug into, you can get that all synced up. Yeah, I just leave mine on breathing. I think it's all right. I don't know. Some people hate it. Some people love it. Whatever. To each their own, right? Anyway, connection, that'll bring you into your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi stuff. Audio, this will bring you to the noise cancellation stuff for like the microphones and then for the speakers. So presumably for like voice calling, voice chat and stuff. Just note that the AI noise canceling speaker stuff, I believe, does use a little bit more kind of CPU power. Both of them would, but... Aura Sync, this is again where you can access your Aura wallpaper and then see all the device lighting for your Ally. It's a little confusing, but you can turn on ASUS performance mode as well. So if you want performance mode on, it'll make it a little bit more smoother, but it'll use more CPU. I'd recommend just leaving it at default. Aura effects, you can change more Aura effects here and then just have your Aura effects match your Aura wallpaper as well as your sticks as well if you're into that sort of stuff. But then, okay, like getting out of that menu, this is just your add game to your library. So if you want to add custom, not custom, but like just other software that isn't put on or detected by default, this is only really detected to games and game launchers. But if you have like Yuzu or other emulators or something, or just a certain app that you just want to have, if you've run the app before, it'll treat it as an executable file and you can just add them manually through here. And then to refresh your library, if a game isn't showing up, you just swipe down from the top and it'll refresh your library. There's no button for it, which I think is kind of stupid, but whatever. You can also sort your library by title, whatever recently played, things like that. And if you press the select button, you can change it to a list view as well. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on the operating mode under settings, as its own kind of like little section. I didn't want to just kind of gloss over it. So going into here, this is where you can control your TDP stuff. So you can either have it set to whatever Windows decides, which I would not recommend. You can have it set to silent, which is a 10 watt mode. So this is for like light browsing, light games, 2D games, whatever. If you press the little thing here, it'll show you the little down key. It'll show you how it kind of prioritizes where it's putting the power and what it's doing. So performance, that's your standard kind of 15 watt mode. And then turbo is your 25 watt mode if you're unplugged, 30 watt if you're plugged into actual power. If you're plugged in through a dock, you're limited to 25 watts. I don't think there's a dock out there yet that you can plug into and get 30 watt modes other than the official ASUS dock, and it hasn't released here yet, so I'm SOL. Now here's your manual mode as well. So I would recommend honestly just using manual mode and keep using manual mode for either plugged in or unplugged. And why I recommend that is because when you're in performance mode, they have the SPL, which is the maximum sustained APU power limit, TDP. So you can have this set, it's set to 15 in performance mode, which is fine. That's what the Steam Deck kind of maxes out at 15 watts, and handhelds generally do, or they start off, whatever. Anyway, so now going over to the SPPT, this is what it can sustain for 2 minutes. So this is like a burst type scenario when it's loading in or streaming in things. And in theory, that sounds good. So this is set to 20 watts when you're in performance mode. And then the FPPT, I believe, is set to 30 watts, if not 35, but it should be 30, I'm fairly certain. But anyway, this one isn't as important. So the FPPT, the FPPT is the max sustain for 10 seconds, sorry. Yeah, and if you go over it, it'll tell you all what they're about. So now why I think this is dumb is because it'll boost up to for 2 minutes at 20 watts. And at the start of the game, when you're first loading in, first playing, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, game's smooth, it's playing, it's running well. If you don't know what's going on in the background, you're thinking, okay, I'm in my performance mode, we're doing 15 watts, we're good. You got the real-time stats up, but then it says 20, and you're like, huh, okay. And then after 2 minutes, it drops down to 15 watts, and then you lose performance. And then it's like, okay, what the hell happened? If you don't know what's going on or why it's doing that, that's why. So what I recommend doing, because in my experience, it never boosts back up to that 20 watts unless you like get out of the mode and then go back into the performance mode. So I don't know if it's operating as intended, because you would expect like, okay, when it calls for a big, heavy, intense thing where there's loading happening, big intense effects or something, okay, let's boost up to 20 watts, not even full 20 watts, but even like from 15 to 20 watts. And then, okay, clock down to 15 as soon as it can, right? And then stay there for a period of time. So what I recommend doing is going in here and setting up what you want your watts to. So if you want your performance mode of 15 watts, just set it to 15 watts and that's fine. And then just match whatever you set your watts to your performance mode in the SPPT. So it's just running at that all the time. You can leave the max sustain 10-second boost up to whatever. You can max it out if you want. You can match it to whatever you want. But it doesn't matter as much because you're not going to be noticing that like big kind of performance spike. And so after doing that, I would recommend setting a custom fan profile as well. So it seems here that they have your kind of presets here, and that's fine for fan 1. But then you go over to fan 2, and there's nothing, and then they got a fan curve. So what I recommend doing is just setting up your own custom fan curve. You can set it up, test it to see how you like the fans and what noise level they get to. Or you can just set them both to 3, so at least you have both fans going. And even at that, like when you only reach 80 degrees, or when you reach 80 degrees, you're only running at 48%, and then it's only ever hitting 48% fan speed. And honestly, running it even with this, I've never thermal throttled or anything like that. And you could run the fans even higher if you like. But yeah, so I just recommend, honestly, just setting your own custom TDP, leaving it that, and then setting one that's plugged in as well, because it'll remember that. And then, so to apply those, so we'll set up a new one here. So if we go to the 3-dot menu, hit create new, and then if you want to name it, I will hit rename, and then I will just name it test or something, whatever, there, sure. I'm just using a wireless keyboard as well. So we'll rename that, and then we'll set it to, okay, we want a mobile overclock. So on battery, we'll do 18 watts, and that's a good kind of mobile overclock. So SPPT, okay, it's still set to 20 watts. Well, no, I will set that and match it to 18. Now keep in mind that the SPPT cannot be lower than the SPL. So then the FPPT, we can leave that at 25 if you like, or you can put it up a bit higher if you want for those kind of burst 10 seconds. So now then going to our fresh fan curve, you can we'll set one up manually just to show you how to do it. So my recommendation is to do a nice kind of gradual curve. So 50 degrees, that's an okay, like not terrible temperature. We'll set that to 25. And then we can kind of probably, you know what, only go up about 5%, another 5%. And then we get up to 80. And then, okay, you know, we're at 80. Let's do 50. And then we'll, no, actually, because it'll get up to 90. So we'll do 45 at 80. And then we'll do 60 at 90. There you go. And then unfortunately, there's no quick match to match it on the other fan. So you have to do everything manually over here as well, which is stupid and tedious and a big oversight in my opinion. But what do I know, right? What do I know? I'm just a nobody with an ROG Ally showing people how to tweak their fan. Okay. So after that, then it's all set. And then in order to apply this, you have to hit the check mark there. And then yes, now it's applied and it will run. So you can change it here. You'll see operating manual mode because it's closer to 15 than it is to 30. It'll show in the manual mode you're at 15. But if you bring up the real-time monitor, no, we are in fact, well, not right now because it's not doing anything. But no, we are running above or would be running at 18 watts. Alrighty, so going over to the Windows side of it all. To navigate windows, use your right stick to move the mouse around, and then use left click, right bumper and right trigger. They act as left click and right click, and that's how you navigate Windows. There's also some other macros, and I'll post them in the description as well. So going first, we'll go into my ASUS, because my ASUS is where you're going to get all of your driver updates, your firmware updates, like your BIOS and things like that. And if my ASUS would actually work for once, that would be pleasant. Oh, thanks. Okay, so you're going to have to make an account and sign in and everything your first time, and then you're going to get stupid pop-up ads every time you go in here. But after you get through all that, you're going to have access to like your warranty stuff, and then you can turn on battery care. Whatever, I just leave all that stuff off. So important things to note, system info, this is where you can check your BIOS info to see which BIOS you're on. So it'll show firmware, and then the last three numbers, 319. I'm on the current latest updated BIOS. It'll show your graphics drivers, your card info, and all that. So beyond that, there's not too much else. Customization, this is where you can see the toggles for the battery care mode and all that stuff. So now going back over to home, if you want to do all your updates, they'll pop up here saying, hey, you have an important update, or you have this or that. So if you go into here, you can go to your essentials. So I'm all up to date on these. You can check here. It'll manually check, and it should manually update in the background, but it's always good to go in here and check every now and then, especially if you know there's been like a big system update pushed out, because typically they can help with performance as well. So that's always nice. Now getting out of my ASUS, another helpful one. So there's two ways of three ways. You can either get to it through the start menu, you can click the quick access menu here, or you can right click on the desktop and then go to show more options. And what I'm talking about is the AMD software. This is just the AMD kind of control center stuff. So this is also where you can see like AMD drivers and whatnot. I'll just full screen it there. So this is where you can set up your graphics profiles and stuff. So when you go in here, it'll start up like this to your home. And this is where you can check for updates for your graphics drivers there. Go over to gaming. This is where you can set up like your global, I would only ever change your global graphics profile. So now getting into the, this is where you can set the Radeon Super Resolution settings. So this is where it tells you like, hey, yeah, we're enhancing your game. It's upscaling it to 1080p. Some setups required. Sure, yeah. Learn more. Launch a game. After you launch the game, enable from software, launch the game, and then set the game's resolution to what you want. So this is what you do, and it gives you basically what I mentioned before. So if you're having a 1080p monitor, and you run the resolution at 720p, and then you use the upscaling. So if the game supports FSR though, that is what I would use. I would not use RSR. I've seen some people say, hey, yeah, no, RSR is better, this and that, whatever. No, like FSR, the way FSR works and the way it's integrated into the game, it will work better and give you a cleaner, better image than RSR. It just always will. But anyway, so you can change the sharpening effect and everything from here. It's set to 80 by default. Anti-lag is it's designed to reduce input lag. That's on by default. Radeon Chill, so what this does, and it only works in a certain amount of games, so I wouldn't even bother doing it. Oh no, sorry. So Radeon Chill, sorry, it limits your FPS to save power. Don't do that. Radeon Boost is the one that I wouldn't bother with, sorry. So this one is, I think it's only available, like Borderlands is a game, so it's when you're moving the camera around, it'll downscale the resolution because it's like, oh yeah, you're not noticing it and you're getting better FPS. Again, don't bother. Radeon Image Sharpening, that's the RIS in the command center. This is where you can change the sharpening effect level on that as well. That's kind of all there is really anything worthwhile mentioning in here. You can see like your display settings. So if you have FreeSync, which is VRR, and then you can see here that you can change like your color accuracies and your color levels. And if you go into audio video, yeah, like you can bring up the performance levels here too. So if you go into performance, you can see your GPU usage, your CPU usage, temperature, or yeah. So, but I would honestly just use the one that's included or use your own. Now moving on, so to update drivers manually, I'll post a website here, but I already showed it as well. But just take a look at this website and there says, we'll show, hey, here's your drivers for the BIOS and here's your drivers for whatever. So if you ever need to manually update your drivers, that's where you would get them. Moving on to a more important thing though, I would say, is core isolation. So core isolation, for those of you that don't know, it's a security feature built into Windows and it's like on a hardware level. So it's to prevent attacks to your memory, if I recall correctly. I'm not up and up on exactly what it is, but even by Microsoft's own recommendation, it is okay to deactivate when you're playing games. So to access this, you go to Privacy and Security under Settings, go to Windows Security, and then go to Device Security. Whoa, that was cool. And then you go to Core Isolation right at the top there, and it's Memory Integrity. So Core Isolation, give you a command prompt saying, hey, do you want to do that? You say, yep, and then you have to restart your computer or your Ally. So I won't do that now, but yeah, once you restart, then it'll take effect, and you will get a performance increase. Honestly, as long as you're not downloading anything shady or doing anything weird on your device, you probably won't have a problem. Don't take my word for it, but you likely won't have a problem. Now moving on to other helpful things in the settings. So this is kind of just like getting into general kind of good to know Windows know-how stuff or where to find things. So to find your apps, you can just go to apps on the left hand side and then at the top you have your installed apps. So by default, there's not honestly too much bloatware, if you will, installed on, at least program wise, installed onto the Ally. There's your basic Microsoft stuff. So there's your camera, your calculator, your clock, whatever. You can uninstall all that stuff. That's no problem. So this is where you're going to go through and you're going to be able to uninstall whatever is installed on the computer, to be quite honest with you. So there's things in here that you can uninstall, like the family, the feedback hub if you want, the films and TV if you're never going to like watch media content directly on the device. Yeah, so you can mail and calendar, Microsoft 360, Microsoft Edge if you're not going to use Edge, OneDrive, all those things. Now getting into all this, what I'm going to show you here is how to repair an app. So oftentimes with Windows 11, I've had it even on my desktop and Steam Deck running Windows that Xbox app just craps out on you. And to fix that, you're going to go to Xbox under the installed apps, click on the three-dot menu, bring up advanced options. Now this will work for any installed app, not just the Xbox app. So here's where you can change like, yeah, all your stuff, whatever. So if you want to reset or repair, so if your app, if you're going to load your Xbox app and it's not launching or it's giving you an error or it's not whatever, and it's in the apps under here, go under here and go to repair. And then if it's still not working, then reset it. Just note that you'll have to like log back in or like data will be lost on the app. So depending on what you're doing or for what app you're doing. Now also go to your start menu and then type in PowerShell This is to repair, like uninstall, repair the gaming services and stuff if Xbox still isn't working, if you're getting an error code 0x0000 whatever. Anyway, go to PowerShell, run as administrator, and then hit yes. And then if you're going to do this, honestly, just go to the website that I have linked in the description and copy and paste from one to the other. So what we're gonna do is from the official Microsoft whatever, this isn't something weird to do. We're going to go down to the first thing here where it's going to basically uninstall this gaming services software and anything to do with it, because you need the gaming services to run Game Pass games, Xbox, and all that stuff. So you're going to copy that over into there. You're going to do that, and then we are going to copy and paste this one. And then this is going to basically take us to the Windows Store and take us to the Gaming Services app as well. And just to install that. Then we press enter. It'll take us to the store, and then here's our gaming services. So you just press install there and hit yes. And then there you go. It'll be downloading in the background. Now, another kind of helpful thing, if you go back over to, command, my apologies. So you're going to hit Windows, you're going to hit CMD, and then you're going to run that as an administrator. So same thing as the PowerShell. So hit yes, and then again, okay, SFC space, what did I say, /Scannow. Hit enter. And now what this is going to do is it's going to scan your Windows like subsystem files and everything, and basically kind of verify it and then grab any full files that it'll need for you. So if you have any issues, or if you're having like weird blue screens or something like that, don't do like a factory reset start. Do one of these and see if this kind of fixes up any kind of weird gremlins that are happening with Windows, because it will happen over time, and that's just the nature of Windows, and that's fine. That's to some degree. Now, going to full screen versus windowed is another kind of helpful hint. So if you bring up the keyboard, and if your game is ever not full screened when you launch into it, and there's no like kind of easy full screen windowed selection in the game setting menu, what you're going to want to do is bring up the keyboard and you're going to hit Alt plus Enter. And now what that is your basically full screen menu. It brings up the full screen and it'll maximize the screen for you. Anyway, so now going on to, what else do I have listed here? I've got like a loose script that I'm kind of working off of, just things that, okay, like I should mention that. So other quick controls we have, if you hold the Command Center button on the left-hand side, or Control Center, that is basically your Control-Alt-Delete, so that'll bring up your Task Manager, whatever. If you want to bring up Task Manager, hit your back button and hit the down arrow. That also will bring up Task Manager. There we go. So yeah, there you go. Now, if you want to access your BIOS through Windows, because as I said before, that sometimes accessing the BIOS through the volume down and power button is a little bit finicky. So what you're going to want to do is type in UEFI, and then it'll bring up change advanced system startup operations, go to advanced startup, and then hit restart now. Now what this will do is it'll restart your ROG Ally, and then unfortunately my screen cap won't record it, so what you're going to want to do from there is go into troubleshoot on the bottom right hand side, I believe it's on, and then go into the UEFI firmware settings option there, and then that'll reboot your system into the BIOS settings. And then from there you can change things like there's the setting to turn off the startup noise that it makes when you power on the device, things like that nature, rolling back or updating the BIOS and everything like that as well. I'm not going to restart that. So to wrap up this video, first off, let me know if you like it. Let me know if there's other things that you think I should have mentioned. I'm sure like there's plenty. There's a lot of things like ins and outs of Windows, but that's kind of like the basic kind of like gaming problems that I've had, or like just good to knows. But yeah, so if you're ever unsure with the ROG Ally, don't look at it as the ROG Ally. Look at it as a Windows laptop, a Windows desktop or computer. Just look at it as a Windows device first and game console second. I know from the coming from the Steam Deck, if you've never like really kind of had PC gaming or whatever, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first, like going from a kind of clean, nice console-like experience like the Steam Deck, moving over to the ROG Ally, which is a little bit kind of patchwork together, kind of whatever. But anyway, it's getting better and it's getting there, and they're aware of it. They're going to keep updating it and optimizing it and make the programs better, so I'm not concerned with that. The Ally will get better. There is Play Night Launcher, so if you don't want to use like the Armoury Crate stuff, there's Auto TDP, which I'll make a separate video about as well, that like automatically automates your TDP controls to match like a certain frame rate, and it in some cases, or a lot of cases, as other YouTubers have pointed out, that it can save you some wattage but still give the same performance. There's also Handheld Companion, which again, if you're not familiar with that, is kind of a handheld device or a handheld program for Windows handheld devices. I've used it before on the Steam Deck running Windows. I've also used Steam Deck Tools. I think Steam Deck Tools is being worked on to work on the Ally and other Windows devices now due to the Ally and the popularity of them, but don't quote me on that. But anyway, with the Handheld Companion, that's how you can get gyro access early as well. I'm not a fan of it. I'll cover it as well at some point, but I'm not a fan of it. I know there's a lot of people out there. But anyway, to wrap up this one, it's probably a longer one, I'm sure, once I get to editing and everything. But again, let me know again with the Discord if you guys are interested in that at all. I'll be happy to set that up because I think it would be a cool idea to have like a little community going on. But again, let me know about that. Again, shout out to the giveaway. Get the video up to 500 likes by Friday, and I'm already at the 1500 subscriber mark. We'll past it now, so I'll probably end up doing something even for that as well, because we're at 1600 now, so who knows what we'll be at by Friday, who knows, and then Monday when the actual draw happens. But anyway, of course I'm rambling on at this point, so I just hope everyone has a great day.